We evolve by being involved. I love that. And it never stops. The evolution thing never stops. And I love the thought of our involvement together in community is directly feeding into our evolution as spiritual beings. We evolve by being involved. I love these new sharing circles we just started today. It's going to be a regular thing every Sunday morning at 10:30 where we get together and we share what's going on in our lives because it's been a big couple of years, right? Yeah, let's talk about that for a second. Now, we're always challenged by choice here, so if this feels too personal or too vulnerable and you for any reason do not want to participate, you do not have to. However, if you're willing to, I'd like for us to look at something. If you personally have lost 15 or more people in the last 2 years, since March of 2020, or just say in the last 2 or 3 years, if you've lost more than 15 people that you considered beloved family, whether they're blood family or friends, if they've made their transition in the last few years, more than 15 people. I know that's a lot, but has anyone experienced that? I have. Joe has. It's actually 22, I think. All right. So if you've experienced more than 10 people who have made their transition that were very close to you, please stand and remain standing. More than 5 people that you knew and loved that made their transition in the last few years. More than 2 people. Please stand. Please stand and stay standing. If anyone that you knew and loved personally has made their transition in the last few years, please stand and remain standing. If you yourself have been very, very ill with anything in the last couple of years, please stand and remain standing. If you've had any injuries, any accidents, any hospitalizations, any surgeries, please stand and remain standing for just a moment. If you've had loss of a job or a loss of a home or wrecked your car, any other life-changing, impacting thing happened to you in the last few years, please stand and remain standing. All right, look around the room for just a second. We've all experienced, the ones standing have experienced those things. Now, stay right there, stay right there. Now, all of us can stand on this. If you've experienced a global trauma for a sustained period of time, more than 2 years, please stand and look around the room. You are not alone, okay? Breathe into that, not the tragedy of it, not the trauma of it, but breathe into the fact that this has been big and you're not alone. Okay, you can be seated. Thank you. I like to think of it as bandwidth, what I'm about to say. Bandwidth, you know, if you're getting on someone's Wi-Fi, if there's a lot of things draining the Wi-Fi, it's gonna move slower, right? For anyone that was just standing, including the people who didn't, and I'm happy for you, that did not lose anyone close to them, for all of us, our bandwidth has been at least temporarily impeded. What that means is where you may have been on it, best friend in the world, just knew when your BFF was going through something and you called before they even said a word. Or you maybe in your job you anticipate people's needs and you followed up with people and at least a little your bandwidth was impeded. And in some cases, for some of us, a lot. And so I realized that, and I realized that after a trauma, we just want to get back to it, right? We just want to get back to it. I remember when I was in college, 2 of my roommates were roughhousing, and one of them hit the wall, and a speaker fell on her head, and blood went everywhere, and everybody's freaking out. Nobody's doing anything. Like blood, ping, ping, nobody's doing a thing. Everybody's just, condo with 6 girls. Anyway, they were just screaming, but I would normally be one of those screaming girls because I don't like blood. I don't like to see it. I don't want to talk about it. Don't tell me about your surgeries. I will pass out on you. But in that moment, I grabbed the t-shirt and applied pressure with one hand. I called 911 with the other, and I'm like handling it. The minute they took her off, I was sick, passed out, was not good for like 2 days. I was done. I was just not well, right? That's trauma. That's what happens to us when we hold it together, but then we just, we're in the, okay? we're deciding what's next, what now, for individuals, for couples, for families, for communities like this. It's a rebuild time. It's a what's next. And so for me, when I'm in the process of any kind of transition or rebuild, I go back to the basics. And one of the basic curriculums that I love to use in this teaching of New Thought, which is where we're teaching our consciousness a new idea about life and about the divine. So one of the things I go back to is a book called The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. Because you see, as your bandwidth was squeezed a little, you just had to do the best you could do. That's one of the agreements. Do your best. Just do the best. And trust that the other people around you are doing their best. It may not be the best you think they should be doing, because we all have our scripts we've written for everybody else, and they may not be listening or reading your script at all. You're like, no, page two, go back to page 2. No. So do your best and trust that someone else is doing their best as well. And then be impeccable with your word. I'm gonna fly through these first 2 because I want to spend a little more time on the last 2. So do your best. Be impeccable with your word. I talked about last week what you put behind your I am, you are causing in your life. You are creating, you are giving energy to it. I'm so tired. More tired. I remember my friend Renee Laboa, when we were co-pastoring, she would say, I'm tired all the time, and somebody called her out on it because one of us did one of these talks, what you put behind your I am. And so she was like, called herself every time, and she would say, I'm so excited. I'm so excited. So Renee's I'm tired turned into I'm so excited. So learn ways to change your I am to fit the direction that you want to be going, because I'm telling you, what we marinate in consciousness, we create in life experiences. So we want to be really conscious of that and be impeccable with our word. That's not just not telling a lie. That's not using our word against ourselves or against another person. And so then that brings me to take nothing personal. That's a good one. That's a good one. I'll be right in the middle of taking something personal, thinking about how I'm going to tell somebody not to take it personal, before I realize that I've taken personal them taking something personal. You know what I'm saying? Just follow that. Just happened. So it just happened. I had a conversation. Someone was taking something personal, and then I took it personal. And then I thought, I just need to remind him to not take things personal. And then Angie goes, well, I mean, you might be. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for honesty in community and in relationships. This morning I was asking Chris about something. I was hanging up a sign. I was like, does this look okay? And he goes, well, I mean, no. So honesty is good, right? But not taking things personally is so important. It's so important, and I know it's hard. I know it's hard sometimes, because sometimes you're like, well, the person attacked me, or they came at my character, or they accused me of something I didn't do, or the list goes on, right? And then I go back to A Course in Miracles. Every act is an expression of love or a call for love. Oh, that's a centering point for me. Every act is an expression of love or a call for love. Actually, the quote continues, a call for love, help, or healing. If you reframed it like that, wouldn't that be easier to not retaliate on somebody, right? When they're accusing you of something, or they're not being their best self that day, to realize that everything is either an expression of love, yep, not that, or they're asking for love. And I know sometimes people ask in weird ways with steam coming out of their ears and wrinkles on their face as they're, But if we can train ourselves to see the pain in the world as a request for love, wow, we can cause something different to happen on this planet, and something different needs to happen. And it comes from standing in the consciousness of love and letting that attract more love. When we start our day in a giving way, people turn out giving back to us. We start our day in a loving way, love returns to us. When we start looking for things to take personal, we're going to find it. Am I right? So not taking things personal. And that makes the next one so much easier. When we don't take things personal, then we don't make as many assumptions. So the fourth one is don't make assumptions. We don't make as many when we don't take things personally. And so when you're looking at life, saying, okay, life is for me, right out of the gate, you're taking less things personal. Right out of the gate, you're making less assumptions. When you're going back to that fundamental truth that everything is unfolding for my highest, greatest good, even when I can't see it, even when I have a hard time believing it, even when things feel hard, even when 20-something people that I love dearly are no longer here that I can reach out and hug. I know that life is eternal. I know the soul is eternal. And I miss their face. I miss their hugs. But even then, I know that life is unfolding for my highest, greatest good. Say that with me. Life is unfolding for my highest, greatest good. Say it again. Life is unfolding for my highest, greatest good. And I'm going to choose to look at ways that I can show up as love by choosing to look for the love, choosing to see even the ugliness as where can I give more love in the world? Where can I shine just a little bit brighter? And some tools for that, man, laughter. Laughter will get you back in a good way. Find an excuse. I used to think this laughter yoga thing, I don't know about that. And then I attended one time, and I felt so goofy, making myself laugh with a bunch of people I didn't even know. I was like, this is weird, but I'm going to do it. So I did. I felt so good because everything's energy. And laughter raises your energy. You can't help it. You can't help but feel better. I was talking to someone this week who's having a really hard time. And by the end of the conversation, we were laughing and talking about what we're grateful for. We were moving up the stem. Went from thorns to buds to blooms. What are we grateful for? Our boys are visiting us. Our nephews are visiting us from Georgia. And I love them so much. Oh, my goodness. And I get the privilege of being the cuddle buddy at night. Basically, it means I sleep like this. One here and one there. And before we go to sleep, I say, okay, guys, okay. What are we grateful for today? What are we grateful for today? I'm so grateful for them. I'm so grateful for my wife. I'm so grateful for all of you. I'm so grateful for this teaching that reminds me that out of no way a way is shown, that out of chaos peace is born, because it's already there at the center of the infinite. I'm grateful for this teaching that reminds me that anything is possible, even when wars rage and gun violence is out of control and injustice and inequity is everywhere. I know that there's still within each of us that creative impulse that is one with the divine that creates change. But it starts one-on-one, one person at a time, one community at a time, and it's about taking ownership of that end result that we want to see, right? Taking ownership of it being the difference that we want to see. Learning to be able to feel our feelings without blaming somebody else for them. Learning to be able to feel the overwhelm without shutting down. To feel sad or hurt or upset, but being able to come back to love. To come back to possibility and to do it over and over. It's called spiritual practice for a reason. We get to do it over and over. And so speaking of not taking things personally, I would be remiss in this particular environment to not mention the law. We talk about spiritual laws, whether you call it law of mind, law of attraction, law of mind action. This spiritual law that's an input-output relationship with the infinite, okay, with the universe, that what we cultivate, the predominant thinking and feeling nature that we live in and that we exude attracts experiences that match it. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. That is also something that not to take personal, because it's not personal. It's this created out of this loving energy of God by whatever name you give it. We have this awesome law that returns to us what we are. And so we get the opportunity to continually hone and polish what and who we are and how we are in the world. And to realize it's not personal. It's just not. It's just showing up to reflect something that needs to be healed or released, or where love needs to be given. What needs to be healed, what needs to be released, and what love needs to be given. If you ask yourself that, you'll save yourself a whole lot of time. A whole lot of amends will not have to happen. You just keep your side of the street continually clean with that. It works. And when we do it in community, we rub off on each other. Have you noticed that? I love it when people say, and someone else said it today, my life is so much better since I started coming here. And it's because we're continually reminding each other of this powerful stuff. And we're continually being in community with people who want the same things, that want peace, that want kids to be clothed and fed, all of us to be clothed and fed, to want justice, to want a world that works for everyone. And when we come together, continually coming together as a community, where two or more are gathered, that energy is amplified, right? And so it continues to amplify in, as, and through each of us. And this community that we call the Carolina Center for Spiritual Awakening, CCSA, is easier because we picked a name this long. But when we come together in this community, we need to remember that we are it. I love this room right here. I've been playing in this room since the stage was over there and it was called something else. I love this room. I love Joe Kuhlman. I love the evening news. Everybody knows that. And this room is not our community. These four walls, this roof, this is not CCSA. We are that. We are that. Wherever we are that. We are that right now. We were that at Magnolia Woods. We were that when we were at the Hut. Literally, it's called the Hut. Look it up. On the side of the Y right down here. We were that then. We will be that when we're in another home that has a place for our bookstore again and our kids and all the things. And yes, parking. And so but we are that right now. And we can't wait to be it when we have the next space that will be our home, right? We have to be it now if we want it to flourish, if we want it to be the change it can be in the world, in our lives, in our city, and beyond. It's to own it right here and right now. Because what happens to it, it's up to us. That's why these annual meetings are so important. That's why I'm knowing in advance and giving you gratitude in advance for staying. Because it's important that we look at where we've been and where we want to go, and what we can do in the in-between. Because this community is about us making a difference and living our best lives individually and collectively. That inspires me. That is exciting to me. That is exciting when I see kids and adults who start watching the things that they say and seeing if they match what they say they want and go, oh, nope, I'm going to course correct that. It was Gandhi that said happiness is when our thoughts, our actions, and our words all match. If we want to be happy, there you go. Make sure your thoughts, your actions, and your words all match, all congruent. And be part of that evolution. Being involved helps your evolving, right? Being involved with one another. I love what Michael Beckwith said at the beginning of the pandemic. He said, community is my immunity. And, I love that. And we bring each other higher. Imagine what your life would be like if you only surrounded yourself. Don't imagine it for too long because imagination creates. But imagine what your life would be like if you only surrounded yourself with people that thought less of you, told you where your shortcomings were all the time, beat you down like you think you can do that, constantly telling you all the things that are wrong with you. Imagine what your life would be like. Maybe some of you can imagine. I can imagine what that's like. Been there, done that. Now, if you haven't fully imagined it yet, take a minute and imagine what it's like to be with people who constantly are telling you you're amazing. Not to blow smoke, but because they believe it. Because they believe that there's one power and one presence, call it whatever you want, but it is this beautiful, loving presence. And it created everything, and it's in all of its creation, so it's in me and it's in you, and I see it, and it's beautiful. So imagine how sweet life can continue to get when you continually surround yourself with people reminding each other of that and doing their best to live that, to not take things personally, not make assumptions, and also being impeccable with your word and doing their best. People that are constantly trying to do that. Then we are creating a world that works for everyone because we're doing it one at a time. I love that David Alt is our contributor again this month for the Science of Mind magazine. He does great daily readings, and a couple of quotes from him from today's reading that I'll just reiterate. Thanks, Kelly, for doing that. I work with balance of 1 foot in the ethereal and 1 foot in the earthly form. I think of the saying that, even yogis have bills, It's like we can be spiritual, but we still are living in a 3D world. And it's about finding that, being able to be both and finding that balance, not just constantly sticking our head in the sand and going, bills, what bills? Money will come. I'm prosperous. I'm prosperous. I'm prosperous. I'm prosperous. No, you affirm that you're prosperous and you take whatever action you need. You affirm that you're healthy and you go to the doctor if you need to, or you do, whatever you need to do to participate in that. The other thing that he said was, I don't have to spend time in blaming or fighting the form of it. That's one of the main points I wanted you to take away today, is stop wasting time blaming or fighting the form. In other words, how things show up, how relationships show up, how circumstances show up. Instead of fighting that, looking for, how is this my highest, greatest good? How can I contribute to this being my highest, greatest good? Where is love wanting to show through me in this circumstance? Because love, as Dr. Ernest Holmes, the founder of our teaching, as he said, love is the grandest healing and drawing power on earth. The grandest healing and drawing power draws things to us, the strongest on earth. So let's stand for it. Let's stand in it. Let's stand as it. Let's stand and be that love. That's the point. And so it is.